All right. I'll get myself a little swig of coffee. And this is my old school Figure 53 mug with my little brain zeppelin on it.
Oh,
It's like I had a friend from college who, when I was just starting the company, I needed like some graphics and logos. And so actually, I was making a business plan. The only business plan I've ever written was for my wife because she wanted to be convinced that I could quit and go full time.
oh,
And
shucks.
so this graphic went on at the top of my business plan that only one person ever read.
That's great. I mean, obviously things worked out. I have my mug is I won it in a raffle of therapists. It was a therapist party and it's other therapists and then you.
I
So
love
if
it.
I feel like I'm having a challenging session, I can just make sure to use this mug.
Oh, I love that. That's really great. Okay. Hello and welcome to Oh That's Good, which is a super casual conversation in which I talk to people who are experts about something that I know basically nothing about, and they teach me something about their field, which they know a lot about, which brings them joy. So something that makes them either happy or brings them pleasure, something that makes them feel good about something they really understand that don't understand. And I ask them to teach me about it so that I can like get a little bit in on what this thing is that's cool that makes them happy. So today I am talking to Heather Lyons. Dr. Heather Lyons is a teacher. She teaches at Loyola, psychotherapy, couples therapy, other kinds of therapy.
Hmm.
She is the owner and founder of the Baltimore Area Therapist Group. Is that the right name?
Baltimore Therapy Group.
Baltimore Therapy Group. Sorry, a therapy group in the area who I have heard other therapists speak very positively about. So that's very cool. And she has not told me what she's going to teach me about, and so I'm really excited to find out. Heather, what are you going to... First of all, thank you. And second of all, what am I going to learn about today?
I feel like I should tease you, but I'll tell you the real thing. So I thought we would have a brief conversation about couples therapy. And I just want to walk you through some of the myths and the facts related to couples therapy because I think
Oh,
there's
great.
it's like I feel like it's something you see on TV and you might see like snippets of dramatized versions of it. And it's something that could be so helpful to people, but I think that there's some fear about it.
Oh, I love this. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to, as part of this, I'll quiz you a little bit. And it is by no means, your answers are in no way reflective of anything, basically.
Okay, great.
Okay. I will share the screen.
Oh
Um,
boy.
and I'm
What
just
a...
going to share my PowerPoint slide so you can't see my
Okay.
reminders that pop up.
Okay.
That's, I've had that go wrong in class before.
Okay. Oh boy.
Okay. So couples therapy myths and facts. We already went through the who am I, a licensed psychologist with the Baltimore Therapy Group and a professor at Loyola University, Maryland. This is a picture that my son says like, "Oh, mommy, you look so young." In that picture, even though it was only taken maybe 2 years ago. Um, okay, so
Kids are good at that.
yeah, yeah, right. Mommy, why are there lines that never go away in your face? At any time in our country, I'm guessing it's in the US, over 1.8 million people participate in couples and family therapy. But as I was saying before, I think it's something that folks are still a little hesitant about. And so this number was even surprising to me because I think people don't talk openly about being in
Hmm.
couples or they're hesitant to join in. So I just wanted
Mm-hmm.
us to review some myths and some facts to hopefully help couples therapy seem a little more approachable.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so let's go into our first myth or fact. Okay, so what do you
Oh
think?
my
Is this a myth
gosh.
or a fact? You didn't know you were going to get tested
I
today.
did not. I had no idea. Am I gonna have to go to therapy about this interview? Like,
That's the plan.
process it later? Okay. All right.
The
The
average,
average. Go
oh,
ahead.
go ahead. Do you want to read it?
I mean, it's not gonna help me to read it, so you better read it.
Okay, I'll read it then. The average couple waits 3 years before seeking help for relationship problems.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna. Gosh, I'm already like, I have no idea because it seems like for a lot of people, therapy feels like a big thing. Everyone I
Mm-hmm.
know, and myself included, before they went to therapy, it was really hard to get themselves to therapy. Like the
Totally.
first time you go, every person I've ever talked to has been like, I needed some major event in my life to get in that door or to call someone. I needed someone else to call for me. I mean, it can be really, really hard to cross that boundary, at least in American culture. For some reason, that's like a really hard thing to do.
Totally.
And so I'm going to guess that it's at least 3 years, but maybe it's more.
Ooh.
But I'm going to say 3 years is, I'm going to say that feels about right to me. So I'm going to say that might be true.
Okay. And I just want to say to the point about how hard it is to get in, that's even true for therapists
Oh, wow.
themselves as
Uh huh.
clients. Um, and so it's one of the biggest things that I recommend to my students over and over again: get into therapy, because that feeling of having to send that initial email or make that call, that feeling of, when we were in person, waiting in a waiting room and feeling like that vulnerable.
Uh huh.
Um, I mean, I can teach them for a whole semester. They will never get what they'll get from knowing that vulnerability of even approaching this.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's true for everyone.
Yeah. And it also seems like something that's easier to do when the stakes don't feel as high, maybe. I
Mm,
mean, I don't know. I have a friend who says like the best gift you can give to your partner is couples therapy.
hmm.
And even if you're not having a hard time, like
Yeah,
even if you're actually having a great period of your relationship. So
totally.
I
One
don't
of
know,
my
maybe.
favorite couples right now is this couple. They are so high functioning. Their life is so together. I wish my life was as together as them. And they just come in once a month just to talk through some things. It really is just maintenance. It's not a
Uh-huh.
need thing. It's just they love each other so much and they want this to keep working out.
That's super cool.
It's
That's
great.
super cool.
So I liked when you said 3 years kind of seems like it could be on the low end, that this
Okay.
could be a minimum, because this is a myth. It's actually 6 years.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so you were
Yeah.
you were onto something. So I don't know if you've ever heard of John Gottman. He's written like lots of books about couples therapy, lots of books for lay people about couples
Okay.
therapy, and it's really good. They're really good.
Uh-huh.
So he's also a researcher at the University of Washington, and he has this lab that he calls the Love Lab,
Okay.
and couples will go in there for a weekend, and they've got like heart monitors on them. There's cameras all over the place. So tons of data related to couples and what helps them stay together, what causes separation.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So his research says that it's couples wait 6 years on average. So some
Yeah.
more, some might be around that 3 year mark. But the problem with relationship issues is that they don't just go away. With individual therapy, one of the ways that we measure what types of therapy works is that you will look at someone in treatment or look at a few people in treatment, more than a few, and then you're comparing them. This is one model of research. You're comparing them to control subjects on the wait list. And sometimes with individual therapy, or people asking for individual therapy, those people on the wait list will just get better on their own without therapy. But that just does not happen with couples because there's this feedback loop, this way that the problems maintain each other, maintain itself. So like you can think about one pretty common dynamic is like the attack withdraw dynamic. The more one partner is screaming and yelling and dissatisfied about the lack of connection, the more the withdrawing partner just withdraws into themselves. And you can see how both pieces of that dynamic feed into itself. So it just, if you feel like you're having problems in your relationship, don't wait because it just builds. But folks do wait, for all the reasons that we talked about before. It's hard to start.
Yeah.
So I also put in here that half of all marriages fail in the first 7 years. So folks are waiting 6 years. It's half of all marriages fail in the first 7 years, and only 5% of divorcing couples even seek couples therapy. So you see how critical it can be. And later on, I'll talk about how helpful couples therapy can be. Okay, so the next myth or fact, if I go to couples therapy, the therapist might beat up on my spouse, which I don't want because I love this person or partner, we could say, or me. And sometimes the flip side of what I hear about this is like the reverse is, if I just go to couples, the therapist is going to, they'll fix this. They'll tell my partner,
that I'm right.
That I'm right. They'll render the verdict that I'm correct, and we can just get this done with.
Yeah. Well, definitely a myth on this one, because having experienced therapy, I know that it's a no judgment zone, and it's very much not about coming in to have someone proclaim external truths about what state you're in or what state someone else is in.
Yeah.
So definitely myth on this one.
Yes. And of course there are exceptions, like in extreme situations like abuse or something like that.
Oh, sure.
But one of the things I was
just going to say, it sounds like in some cases what someone would need is an advocate.
Yeah. And in cases of abuse, couples therapy is actually contraindicated because you're like asking someone to become vulnerable, and that vulnerability can open someone up to abuse. You're sometimes heightening emotions, and if someone doesn't have impulse control, it's not good for cases of abuse.
And in those cases, it sounds like my understanding of what therapy does and how it works is that, as you were just describing, it's maybe doesn't apply at all in that situation. Or what is a therapist's relationship to if they see a couple where they think there's an abusive relationship? Is it like are they operating in therapist mode at that point, or are they switching to a different kind of like caretaker mode?
Well, some therapists and researchers, Gottman included, will want to understand what the cause of the abuse is. And there are some limited situations where Gottman and others would say, I can work with this in the context of therapy. But for most cases of physical abuse, if a couples therapist is seeing this, then they're recommending individual therapy for each of them. And sure, if you're given your ethical obligations, it might be that you're advocating for someone who is being abused, but it's tricky because you don't want to do so in a way that opens up that partner to even more abuse.
Sure.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I wanted to point out here that couples therapists aren't even trained to think in terms of blame. Like, we're not even trained to think in terms of X causes Y, or one person does this, that we're always thinking about the system. So how is one behavior or one way of communicating feeding into or causing another way of communicating? Or how has one problem that's crept up in a couple or a family, how is it really trying to solve this other problem in the family? And so we're not even thinking in terms of you're to blame, because that feels so incomplete.
That's really cool.
It
Yeah.
is. It
Yeah.
is. Some people don't like that, but that's just, that's just the way couples therapists are trained to conceptualize.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I can see why people might feel frustrated if they want, uh, if you're looking for a more definitive, I don't know if judgmental is the right word, but if you're looking for someone to just say, this is the reason that such and such is happening, change it to fix something. And if instead you're getting, let's notice more about the whole situation to understand it, and then maybe have a different perspective on it. Rather, it becomes this like moving your perspective around to like see more parts of it rather than here's your task list, maybe.
Exactly. And you're trusting the couple as experts on their own process, that nobody likes feeling in distress, nobody likes feeling disconnected, but that there must have been some earnest attempt to solve some problem that really just backfired.
Yeah. Okay, this is really interesting. I mean, I feel like we could explore this one for a while, but I feel like I'm also interrupting you, and I should let you just keep going with
No worries.
Your ideas here.
No worries. So I just said your partner is on the phone all the time because of a little of what they're doing, but also a little of what you're doing. So be prepared, folks, be prepared if you go into couples therapy that you're going to learn a little bit about your spouse, but a little bit about you too, or partner.
Sure. Yeah, I think I saw on one therapist's website, there's no one-person problem in a two-person relationship.
That's good. Exactly. It's impossible. And sometimes you're even thinking about more than two people. You're thinking about how much of your family of origin are you bringing into this? If you have kids, how much are the kids influencing all of this? Certainly. Okay, so the next myth: most conflict in a marriage is perpetual and unresolvable. Myth or fact?
So I'm feeling like there's a trend here. I feel like we're myth busting. So I'm going to go with a myth on this. I hope it's a myth because, God, that's a depressing world if that's a fact.
Yeah.
Let's go myth.
Yeah, okay. Sorry.
Oh no!
I know.
Oh no!
I know.
Oh yeah, you actually okay. Well done on that. I was like, oh, I know how college works. I know how she's teaching these kids. We're just setting up a bunch of myths and just destroying all of them. You got me. Wait, let's go back. What is this fact? Let's go back. Okay. Oh no. Oh no.
I know.
Most conflict in a marriage is perpetual and unresolvable.
I know.
Wow, let's talk about this one. That's
There is
intense.
a silver lining, though. There is a
Okay.
silver lining. We can, there is a way out of this. It just doesn't seem like the most obvious way. So again, according to John Gottman, most conflict at 69% is just ongoing. And that's because you're bringing two completely separate people together who had two different ways of being raised, who just have different dispositions. And so you can think about things like neatness and organization, whether you get along with your in-laws, how often sex should happen. All of these about how do you spend your weekends, like how do you spend free time and leisure, all of those kinds of ongoing, unresolvable concerns, and a sign that you're in gridlock. So there are these perpetual problems that are unresolvable, but the goal is to be able to dialogue about that, and we'll talk about that in a second. But the sign that you're just gridlocked in it, that it's just causing pain, is when you're visiting these conversations over and over again. You might feel like your spouse is crazy. You might feel judged in the conversation. You might feel like it's going nowhere. So that's a sign, oh, I've hit on one of these points of perpetual and unresolvable conflict. Emotion tends to get escalated around this. And so I think it can help to realize this is just a part of relationships, even functional, happy relationships. I just need to go about this differently.
Wow, interesting.
So then the point then is to be able to dialogue about it. And there are certain interventions that couples therapists can help couples to move from gridlock into dialogue about it. And usually what's happening is that when you're really exploring it with a couple and when you're teaching them how to dialogue about this, you're realizing that there are actually some wishes within these conflicts related to how they want to live out their lives, how they want to be seen, how they want their relationship to go. So a simple ongoing argument about how neat the house is might be related to something really core, might be related to some childhood unmet need, that it can go pretty deep. And if you're just having a conversation with your partner to honor that can go a long way, that you might not say, okay, we're going to solve this, but at least if you're recognizing the core of it, that can go a long way.
That's fascinating. So you're saying that the research has shown us that even in healthy, functional relationships, they can have gridlocked conflicts about any of these example things that people feel really intensely about and will not be able ultimately to resolve, but can manage. So you're saying that even in the positive, like I'm trying, so now I'm trying to practice like neutral observational language. So I'm not going to be as good at it as you are because I'm not a therapist. But so let me rephrase that. In healthy, connected, or usually connected relationships, there will often still be unresolvable conflicts that get managed rather than resolved.
Yes. Yeah.
That's
the
kind of a
healthy
huge
couples,
deal.
It is. It really is. And I think it can help normalize some of that. You're two separate people. You're not going to be on the same page about some really important stuff. The only thing I would tweak a little bit in what you said is that the happy, connected, satisfied couples, they're not so much gridlocked on this. They've learned how to dialogue, respect each other related to this. So they're engaging in those conversations. They're learning to engage in those conversations that moves past the gridlock on it.
So this is fascinating to me. Do you have examples of what it looks like to manage one of these things that isn't resolving it? So I don't know what a good example would be, but I'm just trying to imagine, because that seems to me almost counterintuitive. Because it almost feels like if there is this unresolved things that are deeply about someone's personality, and we have two independent people and they're not going to change it, at some point it feels like that feels incompatible with like a long-term relationship.
Yeah. Well, I hope my husband's okay with me bringing up this example.
You can ask him, honestly, after we talk, and then if he's not, I'll just edit it out.
Okay, perfect. I think he'll be okay with this. And I think we've talked about this in front of you before. But so I grew up in a house with so much clutter, and it felt like noise in my head all the time. And so I just want organization if you buy or have a thing, it should serve a purpose, or as Marie Kondo would say, it should bring you joy in some way. For my spouse, though, Zach, he was raised with a mom who was constantly in motion, cleaning, cleaning, cleaning all the time. She is a wonderfully warm person, but their weekends were just her cleaning. Zach couldn't relax, couldn't always feel at home because of the focus, the priority on having a super clean, immaculate home. So this is in conflict all the time in our relationship. He'll even make fun of the way I say the word stuff. I say stuff with such disdain. But we understand, like, I understand his history with his mom. He understands my history with the clutter in the house growing up. And so I have to live with a certain amount of clutter, and he has to live with a certain amount of, sometimes it looks like judgment from me. But what is so helpful and what stops us from getting gridlocked on it is that sometimes he'll just come over to me and say, like, Heather, I know it is so messy right now in our house, and I'm not okay with this. Okay. Like, I want you to know that we're going to fix this. And even if we don't, he's spoken to the dream within this conflict for me. And so I feel so seen that I have so much more bandwidth for the mess. So that's an example of, like, how to do this.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And at the risk of just totally digging in on one of your slides, like, that is, what a fascinating little kernel of a moment there.
Mm-hmm.
What's happening inside a person when feeling seen changes the equation somehow without changing the external world. Like, that's kind of wild.
Yeah.
And I guess probably one of the things that's pretty deeply at the core of why do therapy at all.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, I don't know. It seems surprising to me, but beautiful.
Yeah. And so we've found, like, we've been able to find these zones of compromise within it. You know, like, this will never get fixed. He's, like, one of his friends calls him Tchotchke Johnny because he collects things all the time, or stuff. But we've found zones of compromise. And the most important thing is, like, I feel understood, and hopefully he feels understood too.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What a great example. Thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome. All right, let's move on to the next one. So this one is: the worse off my partner and I are when entering couples therapy, the less likely therapy is to be successful.
Well, so now I know they're not all going to be myths. So I can't game the system that way. Can you tell that I was raised in an environment in which, like, doing well at school was really important?
We can work through that here.
Yeah, great. We can talk about that later. Okay. The worse off my partner are when entering, the less likely therapy is to be successful. Gosh, this one seems, I'm not sure I have a guess, because on the one hand, I could see if you wait too long, you're going to have more work and harder work to do, possibly. On the other hand, I could imagine that this could be a surprising one where something that builds up could be dramatically released if you get that, if you share that experience or have that moment of feeling seen, it could shift something dramatically in a way that you weren't expecting to happen really quickly. I do imagine, therapy in general, I imagine some of it just fundamentally taking a long time, because a lot of it's, like, about what's baked into our brains, either from an early age or from formative experiences that we don't even recognize were formative. but in this case, I don't know if that influences my guess one way or another. So I'm just going to say, I don't know on this one. Am I allowed to say I don't know?
Of course. And
Okay.
I chose ones that were purposefully a little tricky. Like
Okay. Well,
that was the intent.
okay, cool.
And this one, actually, you can't have a wrong answer to because I said it's myth, kind of,
Okay.
and we'll talk about why.
Okay.
So, like, if you think about being able to predict 100% of what causes success in couples therapy, the initial level of distress is only 4% of the variance. So, how much of a mess things feel to you, just to say it
Okay.
plainly.
Okay. Yeah.
So that 4% might be statistically significant, but it's not very practically significant. So, like when I see couples that come through the door and they're saying like, we are hopeless. We know this isn't going to work. This is the last stop. Like, I really want to figure out what else is happening in the relationship before I can agree with them on that,
Okay.
because the level of distress just isn't, or the severity of the problem just is not the big predictor of whether this is going to work. So I put 3 other factors here that are better predictors of whether couples therapy will work. And one is engagement in the process. Are you invested in this as a couple? Do you feel like you have a good relationship with a couples therapist that goes a really long way? Like, can you trust this person? Can you be vulnerable in front of them? If they're asking you to do something that feels really challenging and risky, can you lean into that? And in heterosexual relationships, the biggest predictor of whether couples therapy is going to work is if a woman has faith in the fact that her partner cares. If she feels like her partner doesn't care about her, about the relationship, she's not a priority, then that tends to be a red flag.
Uh-huh. Is it typically the case that I would guess in our sort of toxic patriarchal society that it's typically the case that for heterosexual couples to come into therapy, it's more often happening because the female partner wants it to happen? Is that mostly true?
That is so often the case, yes. Sometimes though, when a man contacts us, sometimes I do get a little bit concerned, because sometimes what can happen, and this is not all the time, some guys are just really cued in, they're emotionally intelligent, they've had therapy before and want to try it in this realm. And so wonderful. But sometimes what can happen is that the wife has been saying forever, there's a problem, there's a problem, there's a problem. She's not getting a response. And then she withdraws. And that usually happens over a course of years. And so then when she withdraws and she's not protesting this disconnection anymore, then sometimes the husband can panic and say, okay, what do I need to do? And then he'll reach out. And when you've seen it like that, when you've been through what's called, there's like this attachment cycle where one partner is trying to connect, and then maybe getting angry about the disconnection and escalating in their protest of it. And then they just get to a point, if there's no response, where they feel totally hopeless and disconnected. That's a point where you're a little worried for them. And sometimes that's where you can see the guy reaching out to say, we need help.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's look at the next one. And this is my last myth or fact. Couples counseling is highly effective.
Let's go with fact.
Yes.
Yay!
I wouldn't be here if this wasn't a fact.
Okay, good. Right.
So I look at 2 different specific approaches to couples therapy. In individual therapy, what researchers find is that the relationship is the most important thing. And there are some other kind of potential predictors that compete with the relationship, but the relationship is the most important thing. Theoretical orientation is less important. But there are a couple of theoretical approaches to couples therapy that are really well researched, really effective. And so I tend to recommend that you really look for someone who's trained in one of these two approaches. And in my practice, you don't see any couples unless you're trained in getting supervision in one of these approaches. So the first is emotion focused therapy, which focuses more on attachment and, as it says, emotion. And that's between 89 and 90% of couples see significant improvement there. John Gottman, the researcher I talked about before, he also has a specific approach to couples therapy, and he's seen between a 70 to 75% success rate and 20% relapse. And it's important to know that different researchers will measure improvement, success in different ways, but they're usually through measures that are largely accepted in the field. And that prior to this research, atheoretical couples counseling approaches weren't very effective. The research was finding 35% success rate and a 65% relapse rate. Wow. And so, and research varies, but, findings like this make me really feel strongly about wanting to use an approach that's empirically validated.
Yeah. Wow.
And so not only this, but we see improvements in the relationship. You see improvements in individual symptomatology, like, depression, anxiety, all of this. But you also see improvements in physical health following couples counseling. So there's quite a bit of benefit.
That's really, those numbers are really compelling.
Yeah. I wish insurance companies heeded some of these findings,
Yeah, seriously.
That can be a struggle.
And it's even, I guess it's even more compelling that a non-theoretical approach, the kind of random approach, wasn't that successful.
Yeah.
Clearly it's not just being in a room with someone and talking to them, it's doing it in these specific ways.
Yeah. And there are other approaches that also have research backing behind them. But I would just, say for people who are looking for couples therapy that you're really wanting to learn more about what approach are you following? Why are you following that approach? Because it's high stakes. Usually it's a family on the line. And you want to make sure that you're giving your relationship, like a fighting chance.
Yeah. Wow.
So I think that that's all I have. Yeah.
That's some cool stuff.
Oh, thank you. I love doing couples therapy. And I'm teaching it now. I love teaching couples therapy. So I do think it is cool stuff.
Yeah. It's one of those things where, I don't know. So therapy, as we talked about at the beginning, therapy as a whole is, a lot of people have either a difficult or missing relationship with therapy, like either don't know what it is or haven't tried it. Or have a perhaps inaccurate idea of what it is. Mm-hmm. And to me, hearing you talk about couples therapy is really interesting because everyone has relationships. We all have different kinds of relationships. And even if I don't understand what therapy is all about, if I hear you talking about patterns that you see in relationships, chances are I'm feeling like, oh, I've felt that before. Mm-hmm. I've been there before. Mm-hmm. Oh, of course. Okay. So there's something real going on there. It's not, to me, that's a way in of like better understanding not just what couples therapy is, but what therapy is, and making it less mysterious, and more enticing, and sort of make someone more curious about it. 'Cause I definitely, a lot of what you were saying resonated for me. Like, oh, I've had those feelings before, and I didn't necessarily know what to call it, but someone does know what to call it because someone talks to people about it.
Yeah. And even sitting in a room, whether you're in a couple or you're an individual, and a therapist just gives you a label for the thing that you've been experiencing, even that can feel like relief. Like, oh, there's nothing shameful or bizarre about me. Like, what I'm feeling and how I'm engaging other people, oh, this is actually pretty predictable.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And it must feel, as a therapist, you must have ups and downs, as we do in every field. But I imagine that when you're able to help people work through relationship conflicts and find ways to manage them, that must feel pretty darn good.
I would say so. Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it's really easy with couples to see how the work ripples out, the same way that I was talking about, like that feedback loop, that if you don't go into therapy, things can get worse and worse and worse. You also see when there's an intervention that feedback loop can work in some pretty positive ways too, that things, once you turn towards each other a little bit and there's that connection, you get a response that feels good, then you go back for more. And, maybe that changes a child's acting out behavior at home or their school performance, or it just ripples out.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Was couples therapy in particular something that attracted you to therapy as a field?
No, I didn't get training in couples until my last year in training. And I had to kind of seek it out. And then after that, I had to get more of my own training. It wasn't a big part of my training at all, but I remember the first session I did as a grad student, and I remember feeling like, probably even more than individual therapy, I remember feeling like, oh, this clicks for me. Like I get this. So it was kind of like having the experience that made me like it so much, because I certainly wasn't exposed to it earlier on.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Wow. Thanks for teaching me about this.
You're
And
welcome.
thanks for letting me butt in with all my questions and like half-baked ideas.
I loved it. That was great. Thank you.
Is there any other like last thing you would want to tell someone about either couples therapy, or is there any other, and there doesn't have to be.
I would tell people, go try it out, but
Yeah.
everybody is full right now. Every couples therapist is full. I don't know if it was the pandemic or what, but so maybe when things slow down, try it out. But
Yeah. It has gotten, because of teletherapy, the options have broadened because you
True.
don't have to be in the same physical place to find a
True.
therapist. So if you want to try it out and you are finding that there's not someone within driving or bus or biking distance, there might be someone within electron distance. And I know that, I started individual therapy during the pandemic, and I was pretty convinced that I needed to be in the room with someone. I was like really reluctant because I was like, I need to connect to someone in person. I need to
Right.
have that high bandwidth. I hate being on these video meetings all the time. And there's this lag, and I'm just not gonna be able to connect with the person that way. I
Yeah.
was totally, for me, that ended up being totally wrong.
Yeah.
And it was totally fine, to the point where now that my therapist is transitioning back to having an office setting, she and I are like, so are we gonna move to that, or are we just gonna stick with this? I'm honestly not sure at this point which one. I'll probably try it just to see, but now it's almost the other direction where I'm like, going to her office is a total waste of time.
Right.
So,
But you adapted. I was the same way in the beginning. I was like, I don't want to do this.
yeah.
So even pre-pandemic, sometimes my clients would ask like, can we just do, I don't even remember what the modality was then, if it was FaceTime or whatever. And I was like, no, if we absolutely need to, I'll do a phone call, but I'm not doing the screen thing. And then I really was resistant, and now it's so normal.
Yeah. And I don't, and you have experience before and after. Do you find that it feels like it works similarly? Like, does it feel as effective?
It does. I mean, one of the therapists in my office sees a lot of clients with severe trauma, and she's been the quickest to get back in the office because there are some ways that some of her clients need that really concrete holding and grounding. But otherwise, I feel like usually it's pretty much the same. I mean, I'm having that same conversation with my therapist now about whether we'll go back. And I do lean towards, like, now that I get to go back, I have been enjoying seeing her in person. Like, I don't have to worry about who can hear me, all the practical
Are the doors
stuff.
locked so your kids don't wander into the room?
Right.
Yeah.
But it's fair. It's comparable.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool. Yeah. So try it out is the encouragement. Give it a try. Heather, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I was so curious what exactly we were going to talk about. And I'm so thrilled that we talked about this. This was so interesting and fun and cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. I will see you soon.
All right.
Okay.